All right, so I know I titled it Understanding Men and Women, but I'm going to be honest with you, it was a little bit deceiving in the sense that we're not going to just talk about how to better understand men, how to better understand women, and the reason why this is applicable whether you're married or not is because we're going to look at God's design for this relationship in the context of marriage. But ultimately, I'm going to share with you really a simple story that has drastically changed my life, and my wife's perspective of me, my perspective of her, and that's what we want to end with. But I'll start with a story that's not my story. It's almost like an analogy. I'm pretty sure you've heard of it before, but the story was something like this. You know, the husband comes home from work and is complaining about all the, difficult things that he's experienced. He's talking about this terrible boss and how he mistreats him and all these people that just, makes it hard on him. And the wife comes along and she's like, honey, you don't need to worry about all that because you are smart, you are capable, you're the man. And for the husband, he's just so filled by her words of affirmation, goes back to work, and he is right back on track. Feels like he can conquer the world. Another different week, the wife comes back from work and she's sort of mentioning the same things, how her boss is giving her a hard time, her co-workers don't respect her, and things go on. And so the husband's thinking, wow, it was really helpful to hear from my wife the way that she's affirmed me and encouraged me, so I'm going to do the same because that really helped me a lot. Because as she's sharing about her difficult day at work, the husband's like, honey, you are smart, you are capable, you're the woman, you're the best, let's say she's a teacher. And he said, you're the best teacher I know, and whatnot. And you see that she has a slightly different response to his encouragement. The more he talks, she's progressively getting irritated. He's confused by it. He's like, honey, you're the best. And ultimately she gets so frustrated and they're like, look, I just need you to listen, right? So the big lesson there is that, the difference in men and women, there's a ton of different kind of things that makes us different. In that scenario, yes, it is true that the husband, men, the key word is respect. To be respected, that for that tank to be filled, really strengthens him and is really helpful to him. And we understand that women, of course they want to be respected, but more than respect per se, they want to feel understood, they want to be heard. And so with guys, we approach problems to solve it and to resolve it. But for the women, it's not so much about problem solving. They don't want to hear from the men how to fix the problem. Many times they just want to be heard, right? We have women chuckling here. I don't know if that means like you're disagreeing with me or it's so true. Either way, all that to say, we can go on and talk about the differences between men and women. And there's a lot of literature and books and self-help guides about that, and a lot of talks about that. And you've heard of the 5 love languages and how to understand each other's love language better and whatnot. So I think as a result, there's this great emphasis on compatibility. Right? You're different, I'm different. How do we become better unified? And so, there's a lot of efforts on understanding each other's values, understanding each other's personalities, family histories, all these different things. So for me, having the opportunity to counsel couples both in the church context and in a professional context, what I see is that there's a lot of similarities, whether you're a Christian or not, when it comes to relating with one another. It seems like one of the biggest barriers in being able to really connect with one another at a deep, intimate, loving level is the whole self-centeredness. That it's the husband's asking the wife, what can you do for me? What can you change to make my life better? The wife is asking the husband, only if you did this differently, my life would be better. Why couldn't you be more like this? And so the conversation has to do with how you exist to raise the quality of modeling. Now, these are things people will say, but when you listen to the themes, the battle really has to do with this imbalance between this is what I do for you, but this is what you do for me. Well, this is what I do for you, but this is what you do for me. Right now, if you're to ask, like, how to define what a marriage is, I mean, perhaps this is a church context, so maybe it's similar, but maybe if you go out on the streets and ask everyone, define marriage, my guess is that there's going to be a lot of different definitions of that. A lot of variations of the way people understand what togetherness looks like. I get a sense that there's a lot of people out there that looks at marriage as a partnership. This is my role, this is your role, and this is where we kind of meet in the middle. But, and so when you think of it in those terms, it's easy to see why, like, you can look at the relationships between men and women as these two tanks. And if you're a Christian, you can say that Jesus is in you. So we'll put a little cross in there. So, you're Christians, men and women, and you have this tank where you're saying, here's my role, here's my, for Christians, biblical mandate on what's required of the husband, and for the, so this is the wife, this is the husband. And as a wife, here's my biblical mandate on how to love you, how to play my role. And the problem is, it's like how this tank is filled, when there's an imbalance of how much you're pouring into kind of that give and take relationship, that imbalance is what seems to create tension. It's like, look at all that I do for you, and then look what I end up with. Maybe I should switch it, huh? I think it's more common. What am I doing here? This is more right. It's like, the wife is like, look all that I do for you to fill you up, and look what's coming back towards me. So maybe this seems a sort of common way of understanding, relating the relationship between men and women, especially when you think of the compatibility and all that stuff. In the partnership, it kind of sort of looks like this. Well, today I'm going to suggest a very different drawing. At least when I look at the scripture, God's design, and I'm not saying my drawing is the right way or it's the biblical way, but when I look at the scripture, I see this particular design, and it just blows my mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, or before I draw the drawing, I'm going to divide the next 20 minutes or so topic into two sections. Section 1 is going to draw what I see as the biblical design for marriage, why God designed it this way, and why God gave the husband specific roles or certain emphasis, and the wives certain emphasis and certain roles, and why that works. And the second part, really, the last 10 minutes, is really what I want you to take away with. And I'll keep you guessing what that's going to be, and hold it there. So, last Sunday we talked about, we're going through the Ephesians series, and we talked about Ephesians chapter 5, being a pivotal verse. It's talking about, look, you are in darkness, now you are in the light. And then we get to verse 21, and before Paul goes into all these different relationships, wives, husbands, parents, children, masters, slaves, all these things, sort of the opening statement is in verse 21. It says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So what seems pretty clear is that, and by the way, everything we're going to talk about today won't matter to you at all if Jesus didn't matter to you. If God, you can care less about God, there's no value in what I'm about to draw and talk about. But if Christ is your Lord, and both of you are submitting to one another out of that reverence for Christ, then we could put, Jesus in the middle here. So it's not a brand, it's not something that, it's just a personal belief, but really he becomes a central to this thing called marriage. So then Jesus in the middle, we get that, and I'm going to put the husband on the left side here. I'm going to make him a square. I thought about it, and it's like, square just kind of seems more manly than a circle. I'm going to make that the one. Why? Because they are perfect. It's wholesome. And all that. Okay? So, just in case. So then, if you believe in Christ, you know that He loves you. And there's a relationship there. And you see why that, people ask me sometimes about, I like this girl, I like this boy, I want to marry him, marry her, but he or she's not a Christian. Is it okay? It's not as simple of, it's allowed, it's not allowed. But you see how difficult, you'll see how difficult that would be given God's design for this centrality based around Christ. If either one of them don't have a relationship with Christ, this whole thing kind of breaks down. It just wouldn't make sense. So, let's say both love Christ and they reciprocate this relationship with Him. So, it's all good there. Okay? So, they both have their relationship, and they're solid, they're a Christian couple, all is good. And what we see in both Ephesians chapter 5 and 1 Peter 3, the classic passages on what God desires for the husband and wife. Like what we see is that sort of the theme that you hear is that the wives are to submit to their husbands, and the husband is to cherish and love his wife, just as Christ has done, and that he cares for her like he cares for his own body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this arrow from the husband, the way he loves his wife, this way. Kind of symbolizing this idea that the way husband loves his wife is that he cares for her, he provides for her, he cherishes her, he protects her. Do you sort of get the theme, right, of why it's kind of this going over? And then we learn about this whole idea of the wife submitting to the husband. We see that it has nothing to do with her incapabilities or less than power. But there's a certain order that God has put in a marriage where the wife, really out of reverence for Christ, chooses to support her husband. It's not because she can't. It's like driving. Both of you can drive. Both of you have a license to drive. Matter of fact, the wife might even be a better driver than the husband. But it's like the wife saying, you know what? I want you to drive. I want you to drive. I want you to take the lead. And she is supporting. She's choosing to take on that supporting role. So, cool. So then I'm going to draw an arrow from here, going sort of under. it's not the best circle, but it's supposed to be a circle. So then I'm going under to symbolize the wife, supporting her husband, respecting her husband, submitting to his leadership, and sort of that idea. And I looked at that, and I was like, wow, that is fascinating. Because going back to the earlier drawing about the tank, right? If you think about just here's me, here's you, and this is what I do for you, is what you do for me. There's always a sense of record keeping. It's like, yeah, I did this much, and even though you tell yourself I'm not going to keep a record, there's this innate record keeping that goes on. I'm like, fuck, it's like I'm always saying I love you, but I don't hear any encouragement from you. I'm always giving you gifts, but you don't give me anything, right? And so if you think about it in terms of tank, but there's always a sense of debt, right? But this is what I'm calling a reciprocal love. Reciprocal love, because if you think about it, I'm just going to start here. We have a wife that, out of reverence for Christ, not because he is that awesome, but because out of reverence for Christ, that she, in a godly fashion, respects her husband, supports him. That support, we can elaborate on that and spend remaining of our time just talking about that, but she encourages him, she builds him up, and really, this idea of submitting to the husband is actually a position of power. Men in this room, you know what I'm talking about. The moment your wife, you feel loved and respected by a wife, you go out into your workplace and your whole day is just awesome. You feel powerful, you feel stronger, you feel like you can conquer the world. It's the opposite. Your wife disrespects you, and she doubts your abilities. You can clearly tell she does not respect you. You go out into the world and you feel like the biggest loser. It's such a position of power. The woman has the power to really shake her husband in a way that can really build him up or destroy him. So let's say this is a wife that builds him up, not just in words, but in action. She helps him. She makes him want to be better. You've heard that before. So the husband, this is what he's getting from the wife. There's no take here, but that's just what he's getting from his wife. And for a husband that has a wife that respects him and supports him and makes him better than who he could have been on his own, it's hard for this man not to care for her, provide for her, protect her, go out of his way to show her his love and to use all those 5 languages and in words, time, service, gift, and touch, and all those things, doing whatever he can to show her his love. And for her, she's like, wow, my man, my dude, he loves me, he cares for me, he's so good about showing his love. I just respect him so much. And she's like, oh, she respects me so much. I love that woman. And she's like, he loves me so much. You see what I'm saying? It's reciprocal, it's just ongoing. See, the problem happens when one of the two begins to absorb it. You have the wife who supports him, is humble, is supportive, and he just takes it. He's like, yeah, that's right, because I'm the man. And he just absorbs it, and there's no reciprocation of care. Well, over time, she's going to grow tired. This is what I'm pumping out, and I guess in that sense you can kind of think about the tank analogy, but it would be realistic for her, even though she loves Christ, for the human capacity, she's growing tired, and the tiredness leads to resentment, lack of motivation. So then this starts hitting minimum. And he's complaining, oh, you used to do that for me, but you don't do that anymore. So now it's even getting worse. Other way, husband is just pouring into her, loving her, caring for her, very sacrificial. Yes, he could have chosen to go out with his friends, but no, he chose to stay home, spend time. he's buying her gifts, he's doing the dishes for her, he's giving her a massage, and all these things. And she's like, that's right. That's what a guy should do that. And so it's absorbed here. And respect. No matter how much he does this, she doesn't show respect. She doesn't support him. She doesn't. So then over time, it becomes just very logical that he grows tired, becomes less motivated. So then this starts phasing out. Well, that was part one. So all that to say, the biblical design, I feel like God knew what he was doing when he gave certain roles, because it was designed to have their love and peace be continuous. They're both imperfect, but out of reverence for Christ, they continue to, if they do this well, there's love and peace in the marriage. This applies to those who are not married yet, because right now, I'm sure you're thinking and wondering a lot about your future spouse and the one. And right now, you're probably thinking a lot about compatibility, values, and personality, looks, future goals, and all those different things. But I encourage you to look at your future, if you're dating, when that time comes, to look at your future spouse from this point of view. That first of all, is this solid? Because if the arrow is broken, I mean, it just Jesus will always love you. The arrow is broken there. It just you have no sense of foundation that's going to bring you back. But to look at from this point of view, less about like future goals, compatibility stuff, but it's like, is this the type of man who, out of reverence for Christ, that he would do this well, that he would care for me, cherish me, be sacrificial? If you're going to ask those questions, the questions related to that, it would give you some assurance about that. For the guys here to look for a spouse that you could envision really being this spouse for you. They genuinely are a cheerleader for you. It's not because you're, like I said, you're that awesome, you're perfect. They want to help. They clearly recognize your imperfections, and they're not criticizing you, but they're saying, I want to actually help you with that. So it's not a question, it's not someone who says, I like you, what can you do for me? But it's the type of person where you find yourself going, I like you, and it's how can I make your life better? Because we become one. What can I do for you? So all that was phase one, or part one. There's 10 minutes left, and in the remaining time, I will make one more drawing and one story. And this one is not an analogy, it's a real story. So Rebecca and I have been married for 7 years. This is our 8th year. Come December, it'll be 8 years. And about a couple months ago, I discovered something about myself. And it devastated me terribly. What I didn't know was that there were certain resentments, certain aspects, not the whole, but certain aspects about my wife that I did not like. And I didn't know that I had kept a good record of this one thing that would bother me. And a couple months ago, we got into a little bit of argument, and just the mood in the house was just not good at all. And then I don't know what it was that day. I don't know if I was just extra sinful or evil that day. She noticed that I was not happy. So she asked me a simple question. She said, "What's wrong? I can tell something's wrong. What's wrong?" And any other day, I would be like, whatever, Maybe if I was angry, I would have maybe yelled even. I'm like, "Well, why don't you blah, blah, blah." She asked me what's wrong, and she said, what are you thinking?" Something like that. And it was so shocking because I didn't yell, I didn't make a mean face. Both of us were sitting down in the living room. I looked at her, right, dead in her eyes, and I just said, "Well, Rebecca, frankly, I think you are." I mean, it wasn't a curse word or anything like that. But I'll tell you this, you can fill it in with whatever mean words you can think of. I think it's pretty close. I don't know where it came from. I was like, "Well, I think you are." And it was 7 years worth of resentment, dissatisfaction that I had about her. I had a word for her to describe a certain behavior that I did not like. I just called her. That was the first time in 7 years I've literally, I'm telling you literally. The Bible talks about, the words, really being dangerous, right? Words can kill, because I literally saw my wife being destroyed right before me. I mean, it's almost like even her skin color changed, just pale. Tears. I mean, these were big tears. Just boom, boom. She couldn't even talk. I don't want to relive that day ever again. She started to weep. You can just see the utter disbelief she's saying. She didn't say anything. She just, I never expected to hear something like that from my own husband. God literally destroyed her. I killed her. I knew it. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I knew it. Whoa. This is no simple, "I'm sorry, I was a jerk" type of scenario. I knew I had done some serious damage. I learned. I'll tell you what I learned, but some of the things I want to immediately share with you is this. And whether you're married or dating, I think this is just honest confession. Those who have experienced what it's like to be married, be a husband, be a wife. Here's a reality check. Yes, you love your wife. You love your husband. Before God, you can confess that you love your spouse. The truth is, there's going to be moments. Maybe it'll last a minute, maybe an hour, maybe some days. There are moments where in the deepest part of your heart, you know that you love your spouse. But in that moment, you don't like them. You don't like them at all. You're like, I love you so much, but man, what is that? Because I don't like that. I don't like what you just said. I don't like what you just did. I don't like the way you do it. You love your spouse, but you don't like them in that moment. You see, at that moment, you realize it has nothing to do with compatibility. Right? Personality, values, faith, parenting style, all these things, you're aligned. You're on the same page with a lot of things. But what do you do when you look you look into your spouse's eyes, you're looking at him, you're looking at her, you're going, wow! Wow! I am so not liking you right now. What do you do? That's the question. And that's what hit me like a truck. Because there's a whole commitment aspect, and there's a grit in us that says, I don't like you, but because I'm a Christian, because I love Christ, I'm still going to do this for you. Nah, that's one way to make it work. If you have tried that, I would ask you, how's that working for you? Right, you can grit your way through and be like, yes, I'm a Christian, this is right. This is the right thing to do, so I'm going to tough it out. I'm not liking you, but I'm going to do it. I realize there's limitations to it. A couple months ago, God taught me a huge thing that has changed everything. And that's what I want to share with you. Well, here's what God said to me. I was taking a shower. Knowing what I had just done. And God said to me was, it's Jin. Why are you doing that? You need to rethink about how you're doing this right now. How you are leading this marriage and how you are treating your wife, because Jen, she matters to me. He said, you realize who you are hurting? She's my daughter. I made her. She matters to me. I can care less whether you are liking her or not. I can care less about what you think and what you don't think. Bottom line is, your wife, she's not yours. She's mine. She matters to me. And what he immediately reminded me was actually, come to think of it now, it's many of you. See, many of you are incredibly generous and super kind to my kids. We're my kids here, and you are so loving towards them. Most of the times I don't see it, but the times I've seen many of you, if not all of them, have said something nice to my son, my daughter. Some of you will give them a cookie or candy, or pick them up, play with them. When I see that, there's this incredible joy that gets filled in my heart. Because I'm thinking, wow, thank you. Like, that's my children. You are loving them. And there's a sense of warmth that I feel. That you didn't say anything to me. You don't even know that I can see. But when I saw that, something just filled me up. And then what God did for me was to flip that scenario. Saying, what would you do if someone at church or anywhere came up to my kids and be like, wow! Whew! You're like, wow! How can you be that ugly? Woo! Or kick them, push them, pull their hair, point fingers, slap them around. If I saw that, I probably would kill you. Right? It would take me less than a second for you to run over them, grab me by the throat and say, what in the world are you doing to my kid? what are you doing? What did you say? What did you say to my son? What did you say to my daughter? And that was the connecting point for me. God was saying, Jin, this is not about biblical manhood. This is not about biblical way of loving your wife because you're a Christian, because you're a pastor. It's not about loving her because you love Christ. Yeah. We know that, but he's saying at the end of the day, he's like, Jin, let me make it simple for you. Let me simplify all this for you. If you ran out of your own reasons to be nice to your wife, let me give you just one reason why this is still worth it. Ready? She matters to you. Boy, she matters to me. She's a gift. Marriage is a gift. I didn't give her just for you. You exist for her. She exists for you. Founded upon the reverence of Christ, founded upon the grace and truth of God. Don't forget, she's not your wife. She's my daughter. She matters to me. So when I see my wife now, this is what I see. I'm not going to draw hair just so that it's applicable to both husbands and wives. When I see her, this is what I see. So I can't talk to her the way I used to talk to her. Even in the moments when I'm disappointed with her, or when I'm not liking her in that moment, what I do, what I say, how I do, how I say, it's forever changed. Because every time I see my wife, this is what I see. And I hear God saying, you better give your best. Even if you're tired, even if you don't feel like it, you better give your best. Because she matters to me. I share this with my wife, and I'm so thankful for her because she immediately turned it around and said, now I see you like this. Because this is what she sees in me. Now even though I'm a knucklehead and I do make a lot of mistakes, she's seeing that. And so she's giving her best. I tell you, our lives are forever changed. It's not that we live this sinful, very hatred. No, we thought we were a good Christian couple, but just that simple idea, hearing from God, he or she matters to me, changed everything. So this is essentially what I wanted to share with you. That it's good to learn different ways of communicating. Communication being one of the top issues in marriage. So learn how to better communicate. Learn all those different ways of the love languages so that you get creative in the way you communicate your love language. And you get to know each other's life's history and personality tendencies and all of that. And get grounded in God's design for biblical marriage and all of that. All of that is very, very important. But this really applies to those moments. Hopefully you don't have many of them. But those few moments where you run into a situation, you're saying, I'm tapped out. Because I literally don't have a good reason in my head to keep trying. To do something even though I don't want to. When you get to that point, remember this. You just hear from the Lord. He matters to God. She matters to God. And let that be your biggest reason why you immediately remember that reciprocal love. That you love him, you love her as God had designed it, the way he had intended. So may this keep you grounded and bring you back to where you ought to be. As you leave that place, you forget him, then he or she just becomes another gal, another dude that you're hoping and wishing they would do things better for you. It's way bigger than that. So that's what I want to share with you, and I want to pray for us, and we could even have some time to respond. But really, this is all I wanted you to see, and have that be your takeaway.